Welcome to Our World from My World, a podcast where we dive into all the craziness our shared planet has to offer. I'm Jeffrey Wagner, and I'll be guiding you on this shared journey. Hello! Welcome back to Our World from My World. I have a treat for you today, whatever day you're listening to this. I have been planning this episode since the beginning of this podcast. It was one of the inspirational topics that made me want to create a podcast. And so if there's ever an episode that I hope that you will consider sharing with your friends or your family, it's this one and why I feel sorry for the President of the United States, but especially this one. And what are we talking about today? Do not stop playing this once you hear this, even though you'll see it in the title. Deep sea mining. What on earth is that? Why do you and I and everyone else, why should we care? And more importantly, what should we do about it? Again, something I've cared about for a long time because no one talks about this, and almost nowhere do you hear it spoken about, written. It's not something you're ever going to hear about really in the regular media, but all this is so important. It's urgent. We need to care. And note, a lot of the source material for this episode comes from Will Hilton of The Atlantic and Olive Heffernan from Nature. So both of them wrote really in-depth articles about this topic that helped me dig up a lot of information and helps inspire a lot of the stuff that you're going to hear about here, along with some other background sources of where a lot of this comes from. So ocean mining. What is it? So it probably should be no surprise to you that, like the drier portions of the earth, the ocean has a floor to it. It may not be visible in most sections of the ocean, but it does exist. And so just like on land, this ground floor has minerals all over it. And all of the minerals that fuel our modern world, the devices that you're listening to me through right now, for instance, they exist at the bottom of the ocean, just like they do in the vast space of our continents. In fact, the unregulated space of ocean, known as international waters, which covers more than half the surface of the Earth, happens to contain more minerals than all of the 7 continents combined. Which makes sense, considering it covers more than half the surface of the Earth. Now, deep sea mining, it's similar to surface mining in the sense that you're taking precious minerals from one location in the ground and collecting them and transporting them to process them in another location. Now, an obvious difference is that deep sea mining is occurring in a place that's dark, inhospitable to humans, and also happens to be slightly wet. Also, I would say noteworthy, we don't know anything about it. We know nothing about it. That constitutes both the deep, dark, terrifying ocean and the actual mining process really itself. There have been more people who have made it to the moon and walked on the moon than people that have gone to the deepest parts of the ocean. That's crazy when you think about how hard it is to live in outer space for even the tiniest fractions of a second. That's kind of mind-blowing to me. Now, if you want to get a better sense of what deep sea mining looks like, and I promise we are not going to dive a whole lot into trying to make you think about the bottom of the ocean, because I'm imagining most people are like me, and it kind of sends you off into this existential terror place. I don't like picturing that. It's kind of terrifying to me to even fathom it. So I'm not going to try to leave you in that headspace much. This is probably going to be the only time where you might think about it. So deep sea mining. The easiest place to start, picture a combine harvester that you might see in a cornfield in the fall season, helping basically collect and potentially husk corn. So that's a picture of what you should be imagining is working at the bottom of the ocean to do this deep sea mining. Now imagine that large combine harvester just moving steadily along the ocean floor, just picking up roughly 10 to 15 centimeters of sand and any other debris or objects in its path. And so it just continuously moves straight. And there's just going to be a row of these harvesters all together so that you don't miss any space at the bottom of the ocean. Now, all of this material that is being picked up in that 10 to 15 centimeters of sand, all of that is sent all the way back up to the surface of the ocean via kilometers of tubing. Kilometers! Miles of tubing from the bottom of the ocean all the way up to the surface. I think we can already start to picture here where things can start to go wrong. Now, once the material reaches the surface ships that are basically guiding these large harvesters, the sediment and debris is separated from the precious minerals. So a pretty simple sifting process. The minerals will remain on the ship while the sediment and debris is either dumped off the ship or piped back down kilometers of piping into the ocean. And now it is very, very important to note right here that to date, as of February of 2021, no proposal exists to return sediment directly to the ocean floor. So there is no rules or regulations about where and to what depth all of that sediment and debris has to be returned back to the ocean. That's the what. What is deep sea ocean mining in a nutshell? It's the same as regular mining, just not remotely similar. You know, that makes sense, right? Now, why should you and I and everyone else care about this? The bottom of the ocean is a vastly unexplored region that we know next to nothing about. For context here, Will Hilton, when he was writing an article about this, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, less than 1% of the ocean floor has been explored. That's crazy when you consider the oceans cover 75% of this planet. There's a vast amount of things that we just don't understand. The one thing that I can say absolutely for certain that we know is that life on Earth 100% relies on the oceans. Why can I say that? Because a majority of the oxygen that you and I are breathing right now actually comes from the ocean. More specifically, it comes from phytoplankton on the ocean surface that uses sunlight to power photosynthesis. Now, you might be asking, okay, so phytoplankton are on the ocean surface. Why should I care about them in a story that is entirely revolving around the ocean floor? Great question. Now we're getting to the root of the issue here. The real reason why ocean mining is just a wee bit different from surface mining. I'm sure this will come as no surprise to you, but deep sea mining is happening in the ocean. As you may have experienced when you put a Kool-Aid packet in a glass of water and you shake it about, things tend to expand to fill the space available when you mix them up in water. And so one thing that all oceans have in common is water, currents, and a lot of space for things to move. So getting back to the phytoplankton, the ocean, and why you and I should care about this, let's summarize the two important things we know here. Large combine harvesters move along the ocean floor, digging up the first 1 to 4 inches of sediment and any objects with it. This material is sent up to the surface, with the valuables staying on the surface and the remaining sediment being placed back into the ocean at some undetermined variable height. Okay, that's the two super important details here. There are 2 points in those main topics where something that is usually stationary on the ocean floor, aka sand and sediment, is now moving about. The first is when the large harvester is moving along the ocean floor, it stirs up the sand. I mean, it's no different than when you and I walk along the beach or we're walking in the shallow end of the water. It kicks up that sand, it moves it about. Now, granted, there's no phytoplankton at the bottom of the ocean, but there's a lot of other life that exists down there, and we don't know what impact we're going to have on it. And the big thing is, there's not a lot of opportunities for us to learn it because we're never down there. So we don't know the impact that is going to have on the life that already exists down there. We don't even know what that life does to us because we've never studied it. And the second super important detail here, and this is crucial, when the sediment is dumped back into the ocean, it's not going to be neatly placed back on the ocean floor in a pristine fashion. Instead, we all know this is going to be true. Like, there's no question about how this is going to happen, no matter what a company says. That sediment is going to be dumped into the wide open ocean at surface level, because why would they waste a ton of money pumping it back down to the bottom? We know companies are cheap and lazy. They're not going to do their due diligence here. They're going to dump it on the ocean surface, where the organisms that produce oxygen via photosynthesis happens to live. Photosynthesis that you and I and everyone else depends on. Those large sediment plumes, yeah, they happen to have a dampening effect on the one key ingredient necessary for phytoplankton to actually photosynthesize. It reduces the amount of sunlight that can penetrate the surface and oxygenate the water. So we are killing, potentially, the one thing that keeps us alive. And look, I get it. The ocean is a vast space. So how much impact can this sediment really have? Consider this, right here. The regions in just the Pacific Ocean right now being considered for mining are wider than the continental United States or Australia. That is not going to be a small plume. That is a huge amount of space that is going to be just kicked up, constantly dumped out over the ocean, and it's going to spread for hundreds or thousands of miles when you dump that sediment right back on the surface. It's not just going to go straight down. That's not how things work in water. It's not heavy enough to just sink to the bottom. It's not the Titanic. Even if it was the Titanic debris went all over the frickin' place. It split into two and went miles apart by the time it even got to the bottom of the ocean. So we have no control. The second we put that back in the water, we lose all control over where it goes and the impact it has. And we all know, God, do we ever know, human beings are not responsible, and corporations, the least responsible, most reprehensible representations of what we are. I would never trust a corporation with any of this. Important detail to this here. We know next to nothing about what lives or exists in the ocean floor. We don't know how to fix the problems that we create. Just think back to the Gulf of Mexico oil spill, like the Deepwater Horizon, how long it took to try to plug that up at the bottom of the ocean. Now imagine multiplying that across the entire ocean floor instead of one small tiny vent. Yeah, we're going to fix that. Good luck. We don't even know what impact we're going to have on the ecosystem that lives down there. And we don't even know what we could be harming because we don't even know what exists down there. When we mine on land, we can at least see the disturbance around us. How do you see a disturbance in the darkest place on Earth with sediment kicked up all around you? Of course you won't. You can't. And because it's hidden from public view, there's not going to be a news crew that goes down there and is like, well, Bob, we're investigating the ocean floor, and it looks like there no longer is one. I mean, it's not here anymore, so back to you, and I might come to the surface again at some point here. I miss sunlight. You know, that's not going to happen. It's going to happen entirely out of sight of all of us, with no oversight from anyone, because there's very few companies, governments, or anything that can afford to even get down there. We just don't have the technical know-how to really do it. And so a great example that the articles brought up is that there's bacteria that exists in these deep ocean trenches, surrounded by thermal events that offer us completely unique opportunities in evolutionary studies. For instance, let's say we wanted to overcome antibiotic resistance, which we know is a major problem for humanity moving forward. Well, you know what would be super useful? Creating drugs using the systems that anaerobic bacteria that live down in these thermal events at the deep, dark parts of the ocean evolved in. Because that bacteria, the gene pools have almost no overlap with the bacteria that grew up in our aerobic onshore environment. Those gene pools are completely independent, and that could solve a major human crisis overnight. But you know, we could just kill them off and never get a chance. That works. Let's do that, you know. Why solve humanity's biggest problems, preserve the earth for future generations, when we can mine the planet for more mindless crap that we don't even need? Let's do that instead. That just makes so much more sense. So the moral of the story here is very, very simple. The benefit of mining more minerals to build another stupid iPhone is absolutely bananas when compared to what we might be killing or destroying. There's bacteria in the deep ocean that literally consumes more than 10% of our current known CO2 emissions. We probably have cures to radical diseases just sitting in a thermal vent somewhere off the coast of Hawaii. Why would we kill this? Why would we kill that off so another bimbo can buy another iPhone and they can't even keep themselves from texting and driving? Why would we kill that off for that idiot? Please tell me why we would do that. Oh, I know, because corporations want another dollar and they don't care about the consequences of it. Oh yeah, that reason. So now we get to what should we do about it? The ultimate important thing, because right now it's mostly just been kind of random statements of depressing fact. So let's try to get a little bit more uplifting here. And so here's where your faith in humanity will be tested. And by this I mean, I'm going to confirm what you already know to be true. The almighty dollar doesn't care about life, the well-being of anything, or your feelings. It really just wants to make another dollar and to kill any hope of a future worth living in. I mean, that's really what money is for, isn't it? Let's just kill things that matter, because we have assigned a valueless thing somehow or another control and meaning over our existence. You know, that's great. So before large-scale mining can start in the deep ocean, there have to be regulations in place to keep the industry in check. Major investors have been unwilling to invest in mining companies for the open ocean until regulations are defined and in place, because of the risk that the industry will be so regulated that profits are not possible. This is a very important point. It's not started in earnest yet, because the regulations are not completely finalized yet. It is important to note these regulations are probably going to be handed down in 2021 or 2022, which is why we're talking about it right now. The bad news is that a regulatory body was created with 168 members from 168 different countries residing in the United Nations. This body is known as the International Seabed Authority, or ISA for short, also short for I'll sign away on anything, ISA. So given that this is governed by the United Nations and member nations that wanted to participate, aka they have a vested interest in mining for mineral riches in the ocean closest to them, I think you can see where this is probably going. This quote-unquote regulatory body is less about regulating the environmental risks, or hell, even knowing what those risks are. It's about regulating the available international waters so that companies can pay to obtain the rights to mine there. So let me make that clear. It's not regulating the mining itself. It's regulating the plots of land in the ocean such that they can sell it to companies to make a profit. So they're really regulating space and selling space in quote-unquote open international water. It's not international territory when a company now owns it. That's what they're regulating. It's not how do we do this responsibly? Can we do this responsibly? How do we ensure this for future generations? None of that. No. How do we sell this and make a buck? Short-term profits for long-term destruction. The sweet smell of capitalism at work right there. And you got to hand it to these companies. Rather than dealing with people complaining about all of the terrible things that they can see dying in their communities, like what happened on land, they're just going to go do it in the open ocean, where again, no one can see what they are doing, and they can kill everything before we ever knew it is there. Mass extinction without repercussions. That's a CEO's wet dream right there. And look, I'm not going to lie to you about this. I don't think there's much that we can do to stop what is going to be an absolute pillaging of the last remaining vestige of our planet. I mean, to be fair, we already do it. They have discovered plastic and disposable debris in the Marianas Trench, the deepest, most secluded place on the entire planet that we know of. Humanity has already reached down there with our grubby, cheap, disposable, awful existence. We're already down there. Like, the only possible thing here that can mess us up for companies is probably a massive environmental scandal right at the nadir of the industry that keeps them at bay for another decade or so. But even then, we all know they won't be denied their huge profits because all of us consumers clamor for the next stupid gadget. If we ultimately want to protect our planet, we have to consume less. Or we have to redesign how our entire economy works to be more circular, to like find a way to just get more life out of them. You can't recycle through an iPhone every 2 or 3 years and just expect that we'll have enough minerals and materials to do it. That's not how the world works. I mean, maybe we could start mining asteroids. At least then we're not killing our one finite planet. I mean, space is infinite, supposedly, whatever. But we have to hold companies accountable in the only place they care about, their wallets. The almighty dollar speaks both ways, people. Bleed these companies dry until they actually care one iota about the world they interact with. You know why a company shouldn't be considered a person? Because they don't die with the rest of us when the water is polluted. They don't need oxygen to survive. They just suck the air out for the rest of us instead. This topic pisses me off. I'm terrified of the deep ocean. I don't even like to think about the deep, dark ocean. But I also know we depend on this thing, this massive ecosystem that keeps all of us alive, that allows us to exist on this precious planet. Can't we keep one stupid thing alive that isn't just more humans? Like, why is it never enough? It's not a rental car, and we don't get another Earth. Like, Jesus, this isn't hard. Why do we destroy something so much in the short term? We do it to our bodies. We do it to our planet. We just do not care. I understand companies exist to make money, but there are costs besides just the balance sheet. Where's the balance sheet for our existence, our planet, the future? And can't we at least, for the love of God, do our due diligence before we destroy the ocean? Why is a body that's supposed to regulate for the benefit of all of us, why are they just regulating the sale of space? They're not demanding anything. Like, there's no accountability in the international ocean. We know exactly what's going to happen with it. We are not responsible for this. As you know, it's international waters, so therefore it's beyond any country's regulations, and it'll eventually dilute in the oceans in 3 or 4 million years, and I think we're okay with that. In other news, we made record profits this year. I mean, do you see my boat behind me? I can't even use it in the ocean because it's all dead, but that is an impressive yacht. Why? Why can't we just care? Just once about something beyond just ourselves. Like, we don't have to do this. There are other ways. This matters. And no one talks about it and no one cares. But we should care. We should expect better. Again, this isn't the most uplifting of topics. Because I think you and I, we already know at heart that we've already lost. But we have to know about it so we can do something about it. That's what I want you to do. That's what I'm trying to help you do right now. You are learning about something right now that has the implications of potentially changing the world forever in irreversible ways. In the small studies that they have done around this particular issue of deep sea mining, the small plots of ocean that they've tested with using similar things to these combine harvesters, they did these studies starting 40 years ago. Every time they return to these plots now, over the course of 40 years, the ocean has not recovered in the areas that they did this. There is no life in those plots that have been mined. Things do not just return. Maybe with a long enough time horizon, it might, but humans don't have that kind of time horizon. We can't sustain millions of years of not having oxygen. That's not going to work for us. So we need to be better. We need to demand better. We need to ask for more accountability, and we have to care about this. That's what I want you to take away from this. Listen to this, do your own research, learn more about it, support causes that stand up for this vital part of our entire planetary ecosystem, and be a more mindful consumer, because this consumption and the costs that it has is a lot more than just the dollars in your wallet. Please share this message with someone else, because this needs to get out. It shouldn't just be in a small number of articles that's never talked about anywhere else. We need to have conversations around what we are doing to our oceans. And we need to have them right now. Share this with a friend. If you find out more, I want to hear more about it because this is something I deeply care about because this is the future for all of us. You can send me a message, ourworldfrommyworld@gmail.com. I want to hear from you on this. I want to know that this is getting out and that we're going to do something to make our world better for everyone for the rest of time. That's what is at stake here. Thanks for listening. Please share this message with a friend and let me know how you feel about it.